planning to do on a day like this, had it not been for somebody asking you to judge these events? Would you possibly have been watching your favorite movie or TV show? Going to the nearest mall you can find? For me, I know I would have been reading an excellent fiction novel while listening to some good music. All of these activities in themselves seem quite harmless, even relaxing or entertaining there. But what is hidden there? In between the laughs or the drama? What is sneaking into our everyday lives without rarely being noticed? Like the mold sticking in the dark, unnoticed corners, evil clings to the places we live, our comfort zones. And we need to be aware of this. We need to see what we didn't see before. Today, I will discuss examples of how evil seeps into our lives, and in the end, hopefully give you reason and tips to get rid of it. Just the other day, I was reading a book called Once Upon a Time by Mr. Dieter F. Uchtdorf. In this book, he quotes, "In a world where evil is portrayed as good and good as evil, sometimes it is difficult to know the truth. In some ways, it is almost like Little Red Riding Hood's dilemma, when you are not quite sure what you are seeing. Is it a beloved grandmother, or is it a dangerous wolf?" End quote. Red Riding Hood is an excellent example of bad in disguise. Doing a happy task of bringing goodies to her ill grandmother, Red runs into the big bad wolf in the forest. Ignoring the obvious warning sign of big bad wolf, Red continues in taking the wolf's advice and uses a shortcut to get to her grandmother's house. Upon arriving to the tiny cottage, Red finds a grotesque copy of her grandmother in bed. Being suspicious, Red continues in interrogating. What big eyes you have? What big ears you have? What big teeth you have? Then Red's grandmother tries to eat her. Now look. In helping Red to distinguish the evil from behind her grandmother's mask, she asked questions. Sure, they were pretty stupid questions, but had she not asked them, it may have proved to be too late for her and her grandmother to be saved by a passing woodsman. In another book, called City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare, the four main characters travel to the realm of the so-called fair folk. The fair folk are a very cunning and tricky race. They use the beauty of their world and music to trap you. While walking towards the queen, one of the main protagonists looks to her left. She sees marvelous creatures dancing to an intoxicating music. Without even realizing it, she starts to wander closer and closer. Thankfully, another protagonist stops her and jerks her back to reality. He draws a magical marking on her arm to help her sight and whispers, "Now look. Now look." She turns her head, and instead of the glorious beauty she once saw, she sees ugliness, hollow eyes, stringy hair, and ensnaring arms. Now look. Apply these fair folk to the likeness of Hollywood, constantly slipping inappropriate things into kids shows like iCarly or Jessie. Especially the most popular shows like Glee are filled with these small things. Drug use is something extremely pressured as cool and funny, something that'll lead to the best nights of your life in these TV shows. Just since 2003, illicit teen drug use is up by roughly 30.3% in 8th grade, 44.9% in 10th, and 52.8% in 12th. And sadly, a lot of these underage drug users are under the false impression that this is cool or contentedly normal. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the extremely popular Twilight Saga. When I first heard about these books, I was ecstatic. The danger, the romance, the forbidden love, and the humor created the perfect read. One day, I was explaining to my mom about these books, trying to convince her to read them. Of course, she still hasn't, but as I was explaining to her about how in the books, vampires are amazing creatures with good potential, her eyebrows sort of pulled together in that way that told me I was about to get a whole lot more than I wanted. She surprised me and simply stated, "That's dangerous." I was very confused. Of course it was dangerous for a vampire to love a girl. "Oh, I love you so much, nom nom nom." Only later did I realize what my mom was actually meaning. It was dangerous. Dangerous to have the horror of folklore portrayed as angels. Things that fed off humans was now something to be envied because of its goodness, skill, and beauty. Now look. After understanding what I had pondered over, I couldn't read the books the same. Every day, media, friends, and fun are taking us to unknown places. A lot of the time, they are taking us there supposedly unaware. In the first remake of the Sherlock Holmes movie, Holmes is taken by unknown people to an unknown place for an unknown reason. During his mysterious carriage ride, Holmes has a bag over his head, one of those little bags that people always put on their captives' heads. However, upon arriving to his peculiar destination, Holmes knows where he is because of a bump in the road and a baker's unique ingredient smell. He knows who his captor is because of a ring on his finger and the distinct color of his iris. And he knows why he is there because of the symbols about the room and the current circumstances of the town. Now, we may not all be as attuned as Sherlock Holmes. I mean, I can't tell you who your long-lost mother is, or what you might do for a living. But despite the extremities of Holmes' talents, he gives us a great tool. To look, but not only look. Figuratively feel, hear, even smell. Use your surroundings to figure out what is behind the good, or the obvious. I realize that this particular task in itself is much, much easier said than it is done. We all have something much more sneaky to us than it is to others, something that gets past our ingrained bad detectors. I know for me, it's music. I live in music. It plays morning, noon, and night in every room of the house. But it can be dangerous. One of my favorite songs was Lollipop, and not the traditional, old-fashioned lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop. It was new, and it was different. I loved its syncopated beat and awesome rhythm, so I brought it to school to show to a group of my friends. However, when the chorus came on, I looked up and, to my surprise, found mixtures of astonishment and horror on their faces. What could possibly be wrong? I turned off the music and tried to blow off the awkward situation with a joke. Later that night, I rethought about the lyrics and asked around. I soon found out how terribly wrong the song actually was. I had not even noticed. Evil is everywhere. It's taking place it never would have dared to go before. Work, home, and especially school. I've seen those booby bracelets worn around. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against them. They're supporting the good cause of breast cancer. But when you see them, what immediately comes to mind? In the simplest things it comes, hidden meanings on t-shirts and secret jokes. It seems like a hopeless cause, I know. The small things can sometimes be the hardest. Like slivers, it can be hard to get to them amongst the calluses of skin. Like I said before, music is my sliver. It's something that I love, but there are things that I love just as much as music. For instance, Peter Pan, chocolate, and talking. And for me, those things aren't dangerous. They're good, wholesome things that keep me smiling. There are plenty of things out there that are sneaky and evil, and I've given you a few examples and tools to get rid of them. But along with that dangerous is the good. The good of corn dogs and cotton candy at a fair. The good of dancing in the rain. And for me, those things seem much preferable to the dangerous evil hidden in other things. I'm not saying it's easy to get rid of this, because it's everywhere. But I am saying that it's not impossible. As soon as we take the first step and turn off the music when a little something not so good pops in, it'll get easier. I challenge you to go home and see what you might not have seen before. Just open your eyes a little wider. Now, look. Thank you.